Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Your favorite podcast, it's Critical Blast!
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
And I'm Scott Wakefield, host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham, where we talk about comic books and all kinds of great storytelling, sometimes with incredible guests. And we want you to join us Wednesday nights from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you there.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to A Show on Tuesday, hosted by myself and joined by Mr. Aaron Humphreys. We're just talking about Rose City Comic Con, which is coming up here in a couple months, and you'll be able to find both of us there. Yep. What the? Yeah. I'll just be running through there on Saturday probably, but you're gonna be there all weekend, hucking your wares. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes. And we are, of course, brought to you by another convention coming up here, which is Daytona Beach Comic Convention. They couldn't hear you. Say everything you just said.
About Rose City?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll be there. Was it September 11th through the 13th? That weekend, and I will be there checking my stuff. I will be in the table O, because it's all alphabetical. 1, so O1.
Okay.
But it's weird the way they listed it, because it's like it was like then a 0, 1, and I was like, what is that? I was like, I get it. It's just O1. I'm at a corner table, so you'll find me.
There you go. Alrighty, and of course we are brought to you by Daytona Beach Comic Convention, DaytonaBeachComicConvention.com. Go there for dates, tickets, everything like that. And this tonight is going to be a little different. Quentin could not join us. He had some issues at home, so he is taking care of that. So we are going to be just the two of us chatting, and it may be a shorter episode than normal. We will see how the conversation takes us. It may just turn into 30 minutes of talking about Appleseed.
That pretty much usually what it boils down to most of the time.
Yep. So we are going to be talking about communication tools, specifically stuff you might use when working with a team to make a comic book. So these are both the creative tools, planning things, stuff you might put together to pass around to the different members to help facilitate everyone being on the same page, or help make sure people's designs and ideas are all aligned, and you're not don't have the writer going off doing something insane that doesn't make sense for the character you designed, or don't have the artists drawing panels that don't exist, as well as business style tools that you may end up using to make sure everyone is on time and you're all getting paid. As you all know, art serves no purpose other than to line our pockets.
Yes.
Absolutely no expression, only manufactured pop art.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
Andy Warhol would be proud.
Exactly. It's just weird that Andy Warhol really did create the pop art mentality, yet he was also perhaps one of the most expressive artists of his time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. It's just like just like a person. Him and Salvador Dali were also a character as far as like artists. Most artists, but they were like, no. I think more people actually nowadays can actually recognize Andy Warhol himself than most of his art.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you show someone like the tomato soup painting, they have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could pick him out, like, and he was Mr. I think it was like, wasn't it Studio 64 or something?
Yeah.
Or was that a bar or something like that?
I think
I think it was
one that was the studio, and the other one was
Silverline.
one that was the studio, and then they made a bar named after it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you show
It was like, oh no, go ahead.
I
We'll
was
just keep
gonna
interrupting.
say, yeah, no. It's like, yeah, you show someone like a photo of a dude in big square glasses, a turtleneck, and poofy white hair, and they know who he is.
Yeah. It's weird. There's some artists that you just know. Same thing with Frida Kahlo. I think more people know who she is, than a lot of her art. But a lot of her most famous pieces have her in the art.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Oh man, I forgot about it. I forgot his name. But they just recently, obviously this is known, but it just recently got popularized. There was a French artist in the 17th century. I can't remember his name, but he's well known for his absurd self portraits, and a couple of them have been memed. And it just recently come out that like, oh, it's all the same guy, and it's all just him, and he was known for doing really weird self portraits. Like, he essentially did like a self portrait variation of like a candid photo. So it'd be like him like looking up from like picking something up, or him just kind of yawning or whatever.
Oh yeah, I don't think I've seen. You probably have seen this guy.
Yeah.
If I, no, I know. It's funny. Taking art history, I think I know a lot of. I can pick out more pieces, but some of the more famous artists I can pick out a little bit. But mostly I just know the pieces. I don't always remember the name of the artist, but I remember most of the pieces. A lot of the artists I've never seen. I think I've seen pictures of Picasso. I've never seen a picture of Klimt.
His name was.
I think I saw a picture of not Monet, the guy who does like the sort of the French what is his name? He has those like the flowery dresses, and the woman they were used as advertisements back in France.
Okay. But
I can't remember. So they starts with the M.
Yeah.
I
found the guy who I was looking at. Oh, Monet.
Monet.
Yes.
Yeah.
The guy's like was Joseph Decroix. He was 18th century.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to look him up. I probably have seen him. I've seen like a lot of these, like, again, famous paintings and stuff. It's weird. I mean, speaking of communication, they couldn't really. Yeah, they go down and communicate with them. It's funny. Speaking of communication, do we ever call each other? It's mostly just email and text. I don't think we ever call other artists or So I think it's mostly email and text.
The only time I call someone, it's usually an editor or a writer at a different press. I'm like, hey, here's something I need to run by you. Or like, it's never like with in-house. In-house, I'm like, I'm just gonna email them because they have information on file, or it's like instant message. But if it's someone like out of the company, or if I'm just trying to set something up, I'll call. But
yeah, especially for a formal. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, with my I know when I do client work, we do a lot of Zoom meetings. But even when I do a lot of the Zoom meetings, a lot of them are not. We don't show our faces. It's just. Because we'll be showing the artwork on the computer. And so I've worked with clients from like Norway and stuff, and they, you think we'd all see who they are, but I a lot of times never see who these clients are. I just hear their voices. So they basically use the computer and the Zoom meetings as like phone calls. They all look at the art at once.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I know I don't know how well this is doing, but I know some architects will actually do meetings in virtual reality where they can actually look at basically a 3D model of whatever they're going to build, a house or whatever. I think they can do that. I know they were doing that before. I don't know if that's still something common, but I think it was something that they can all join in on the VR server, and then they would just basically rotate the house in the VR server and let people look at it.
As I know that picked up when I had done a few courses in 3D model design using like stuff like AutoCAD.
Yeah.
And then you would just kind of, you do your framework, and then you would set your boundaries, so then it would populate the 3D, and then you'd actually go through and like fine tune everything, and then you'd be able to get a bunch of people into that same file and then go through Skype and rotate it or whatever. But I did see videos where like they're able to export that into just this weird 3D viewer or whatever. So you'd have the like the architect or one of their assistants with their goggle and everything, just like walking through, showing everything off, and everyone else is watching this screen being shown off onto their Skype or whatever.
Yeah, they can do that. It's pretty crazy because it gives more of a visual idea of what this will look like in like not so much real time, but in like from your viewpoint.
Right.
Like it's not a small down version.
And it has a lot of
It's
perspective to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've used a virtual reality painting programs before, just played around with them. It's pretty crazy because you can actually eventually kind of walk around your painting in midair. I'm not really sure how much use that has, but it's kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard stuff they're supposed to be doing. I think it's a long ways off to becoming standard, but it is pretty cool the stuff they can do. Eventually think with communication that we could just jump into VR and like flip through comics or whatever and do it that way.
Right.
But I think so. Yeah, most of the time I just use email. At least so far with all the people I've done, I've used email. Even with Roland and stuff, just email. Yeah.
Yeah. With Wolf Hunter, it was a mix between email and Facebook Messenger on unnamed project. We've done everything over Facebook Messenger so far, but it just I don't have the illustrator's email, so, but it's just easier to have all three of us there. So when you need to share documents, it just kind of acts like a Slack channel. So if you would see it on Discord, it'd probably do the same thing. Just create like a private Discord channel where you could just everyone's all in the same chat room and you can just upload documents and review them in real time.
Yeah. I'm surprised that we don't use more Discord meetings. We have had some, at least Silverline, we did have a few like all company meetings, like one or two.
Yeah.
And I know that we do talk about stuff after the stream about updates and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know of any project groups meeting online.
Yeah, talk. I feel like it makes a lot of sense for our position where we're a media entertainment company, so we have the vast majority of what we do is front facing. But the productions that we were not customer service, so all the production, everything like that is somewhat hidden. So being able to have like a chat room or whatever that we can lock behind a password and keep it hidden from view from the general populace, so we can again essentially use that as our pipeline. So all the documents go in there, all the notes back and forth go there, and then we can just pop on over to our front facing thing to talk with readers or talk with podcast listeners or whatever. I think Discord makes a lot of sense because it combines essentially the same thing as like a fan surface app as well as what Slack would provide in like Office.
That makes sense. Yeah, I know Discord has a lot of Discord's been around a long time, hasn't it?
It's been there a couple years now, yeah.
Yeah. And I think wasn't it primarily more for streaming video games before it caught on to other things?
It was originally just for like putting together like it replaced like things like Ventrilo and TeamSpeak, where it's just for putting together like group communications. And then streamers started using it and then turned it into like community centers. So that's when they launched Discord communities, which gives the server owners a lot more tools to actually like create those faceted levels of interaction with their server. So you could have like your fans and your readers, maybe your paying patrons or subscribers on Twitch or whatever, and then people are actually working on the production side. So everything has a different level of access.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, I'm still learning Discord a little bit, but yeah, I know a lot of people really like it and stuff. It reminds me of like the old time server rooms before like internet, when people would do server rooms on the internet. I think message boards and stuff like that.
Yes, yeah.
People would do moderating.
Lots of after school role playing games played in those.
Yeah,
among other things.
Now I think most of the role-playing games, they actually have you can roll the dice on the computer.
Yes.
I think the computer does most everything.
Yeah.
They even have stuff with some of the board games. I know. there's an app that you can get a lot of board games on there and play them that way.
Yeah. We did on stream a couple nights ago. We did Scythe, which is a fat board game, but we did that over the computer
It's
app.
been around a good while.
Yeah, which is also based off of entirely based off of one guy's illustrations, and when the company's like, "Hey, we want to make a board game based off of like these 5 pieces of art you made."
They did it.
Yeah,
because I know it's been pretty popular.
Yeah, so we did that over computer, and that was a good time.
Did it work? Did it work pretty well doing it over computer?
Yeah.
Because I wonder, because like I've been trying to find people. I was playing Gloomhaven for a while, and I've been trying to find some other people. Tried playing Gloomhaven myself. It's no fun playing games by yourself, especially board games. You want to have somebody out there.
Yeah.
But I wonder if they've adapted that into the computer. I wonder how hard that would be. It's got a lot of moving pieces.
It might be. There might even. I wonder if there is a Steam version of it. Also, another thing I noticed is a lot of board game publishers are also now getting the ability to either license or make their own ports for things like Steam or Origin, so you can play just just a digital API of their board game, but everything works the same.
Yeah, they were. I know Gloomhaven was. I think it was for Steam. Were making like a video game version that played just like the board game, but I think it was in beta, and I have no idea if they ever finished this or if it was something they just were. Oh, we're gonna do this, and then the board game took over, and then they're like, we don't need to make a video game. We could just make a board game.
Right.
I don't know. But yeah, they've made a few of those so-called legacy games. That's the only one. That was maybe the first big one I got. But there's another one called. I don't know if it's called Mandalore. So it was like M.
Yeah. Also, someone was like Frosthaven. Gloomhaven does have a Steam port.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, and it's just the board game, but ported over.
I know Frosthaven's supposed to be out, and I think that's one where you can actually build your town or something. I just got the original Gloomhaven, and Frosthaven seems fun, but I think it's even bigger. I saw a picture of their comparison the pieces from Gloomhaven to Frosthaven. They actually had to put more in Frosthaven.
Yeah.
Like, okay, wow. So, yeah.
All right. So,
like, well, you play some of the miniature combat games. You don't play Warcraft, do you? Not. Well, yeah. Isn't it Warcraft?
Warhammer.
Warhammer.
Yes.
Sorry, Warhammer.
Unpainted, but yeah. Warhammer Age of Sigmar is actually like my main jam.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you gonna paint that?
I gotta paint it, yeah. So this is just after assembly. I gotta go through and paint. That's Lord Celestant on a Draco-Lion.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
How long have you been playing Warhammer for?
I've played 40k for a couple years, and then just this last year we got into Age of Sigmar with the edition before this one. The new one just came out, and I got that book sent out to me the day it came out. But the edition before this one, we kind of got into it, coming off of 40k and Kill Team. Did a little bit of Warcry, which is fun, very quick. Makes for good multiplayer stuff if you have like an odd number of people at your game table. But,
do you have a space at home where you play, or do you play at stores or whatever?
I haven't actually played at a store really. We do have a table here. We've played a few times, but usually what we do is we have one of our friends in our group has a garage they're turning into a studio space for potentially a YouTube thing that may involve painting streams as well as battle reports.
That's cool.
People should again be looking out for only gamers. But that is he has like a full pool table that we're in the process of modifying to be like a war game table. There's a bunch of cool. We got sofas and everything in there. So we can use like control streaming setups. A bunch of shelves that we're adding more armies to for all the different games we play, and I'm looking at getting some wall decorations for it as well.
That sounds cool. Yeah, I know Warhammer's been around forever and ever and ever.
Since the late 60s, yeah.
Yeah, my co-worker that used to play it and paint it, and I think he had I don't think he does anymore, but because he had a family, so it kind of took over his time. But I remember he brought us some of his painted miniatures and stuff, and it's like, wow, it's definitely investment once you're into it and you find other players. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever play in tournaments?
No. I play too much. I do what's called open play, where I'm just kind of about just having fun with it or the narrative of it. There's matched play, which is tournament things. So that's about having the hyper competitive list. The battlefield is completely balanced, and it's all about, maximal point efficiency. There's narrative play, which is you work with people to create kind of like not more like an RPG, but just kind of a story behind what's happening. So you're like, all right, I'm playing as we did this with a game of SPQR recently as an example, where we had one person playing as Imperial Romans, one playing as Spartans, one playing as Macedonians. And so we were kind of like, what if this is like the Second Macedonian War or whatever? Rome marched into like this weird conflict between whereas the Macedonians marching south, the Spartans were like setting up to defend everything, and the Romans came and just kind of got caught in the middle of this other war that was happening at the same time.
That's cool. So you made up the story?
Yes, and then you guys kind of make the map fit that scenario or whatever. So, like, what if it's this river crossing, and then the Romans are coming from the side, so you have to figure out which bank they're going across or whatever. But then there's open play, which open play is just very basic rule kits. So it's like deathmatch, King of the Hill, capture however many points or whatever. And you might have like point caps on that. So, or you might just say bring however many models you can bring, put them on the field.
That's kind of cool.
And so that's more what we do, is just kind of like more about the fun and the meme of it, where someone be like, I brought 15,000 points, but it's only the worst model in my army.
The one that's just not going to do very much damage.
Yeah.
Hey, can you mix and match the armies doing that?
Yeah, and so because we're not doing anything tournament legal, we do kind of mix and match a little bit. There are rules also for like actual like mixing and matching to get added effects. So if I'm running my Stormcast Eternals, I could mix and match some Sisters of Cain, and I'd get a battalion bonus that way or whatever. Or if we're just doing kind of whatever, I might bring into some random orcs in there, toss them in there just because it's fun.
That's kind of cool. Yeah, I've never played. I loved looking at all the dioramas when I go into the stores that had the tables of people playing, and they would make like entire battleground to stuff. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never got into it. Usually I just didn't have the money to get into it. It was kind of an expense. But people had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah. The cost of entry is definitely what gets a lot of people. Because you're buying a $50 rule book, maybe also additional like faction book if you're not using like a faction PDF, or the faction app, and then the models themselves plus the paints.
Are the models cheaper now that they're mostly 3D printed?
Yeah, now they're a lot cheaper. Back when they were like actual cast metal, oh my god. And then after that they went to oh man, I forgot what it was called. Something cast. Now they're all die cast, I think. And now they're all so now you can get like a decent starter box for like $60 to $90, and that's enough to get you an army on the field. And then you just need to put them together, spend some money on paints to get like a basic idea of what their like scheme is. But like back in the day, like $90 would be like one squad.
Crazy. Yeah, because I remember they were super expensive to get into, and now when I go in the store, they have like D&D miniatures. Yeah. Which I think so that you can buy like little miniatures like $5 or like 3 goblins. So that was kind of cool. I mean, because I remember in D&D you kind of like had to kind of use your imagination. So I take it this is something you can use with the main game to kind of illustrate what you're doing or whatever.
Let me see if I have my dudes around here anywhere. Yeah, stuff like this guy. Just a little elven sorcerer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can basically throw like on the table, like this is your character. Because it used to be like, I mean, they did the grid paper. Now I think they have washable mats where you can just.
Yeah, we use one of those, or we even like we'll sometimes just break out the the Warhammer like wargaming terrain and just actually like put together like a small like field or whatever with that.
Like this is what's happening. Yeah, because it gives a little bit of reference. Because sometimes, I remember when I used to play D&D, it was sometimes hard to remember. Like, okay, so my friend is behind me. This, trying to. And so sometimes you want to get a little tactical. Not that you have to be super tactical at D&D, but get a reference of like where everybody kind of is on the field and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah,
definitely helps. So speaking of visual references. When it comes to communicating in a group, there are a couple different things that you might need to pass around before you actually get into making the comic itself. And one of those things might be either character designs or character sketches, or even thumbnails once you actually get to like setting up pages. So you're doing, we talked earlier, but this is going to be your first comic that you're really collaborating with someone on.
right. And I actually was doing, I did character sketches and I sent it to him. And again, my writer, he seems like everything I do, because he hasn't asked for any changes or major changes. I can't think of any really. But I actually was sending my thumbnails of the comic pages to him. And he kept approving them all, and I finally asked him. I forgot one time to start drawing. I'm like, do you want me to send these? And he's like, no, just draw them. This is a rarity. Most people require thumbnails and stuff. So if I was working for a client, especially with a lot of times that I do motion graphics, they will give me what's called a voiceover. This is what what they're going to be saying over the video. Rarely do we have people speaking lines. It's basically like somebody narrating that nature documentary, same concept. And they call it VO, a voiceover. So I get that. And then from what they're going to say in the video, I try to design how it would look and a storyboard. So I will try to break down. And some of the stuff I have would be like, say if I'm doing something for a bank, like your bank has like, 0% interest rates and blah, blah, blah. And like you have to try to illustrate what that is and then put that into a storyboard. My thumbnails get a little more detailed than more other people's just so people can see them. And then I send them to them in order. And I know some animation will do animatics, but usually just a storyboard. And I don't know, thumbnails would serve the same thing in comics instead of me just sending a storyboard, which is, the same frame, because it's a television screen, so it's like, I'm sending an actual thumbnail of a page. And of course, if anything, that's hopefully helping me and the reader find out like the flow of how this is going to go, the dialogue or whatever. And some people do. My thumbnails over the years are very rough. I don't even think, let me see if I have some that I do for my own comic. Now this is for me in my eyes, so this may look like nothing. Yeah, here's one. So this may look like nothing to you guys, but it's like stick figures and there's like the writing. So there's not much. I know everything kind of going on, so it's just like stick figures and stuff. Now, if I was doing it for somebody else, it'd be a little more detailed, much more detailed.
Sure.
But I haven't had a writer ask me to do that yet. So I got lucky with my writer. So,
absolutely.
So I'm glad he's liking it so far. He's liking everything I've given to him. So I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah.
But so when you're as a writer, do you like your thumbnails set up in any particular way? I mean, do you like to put them in order?
We got a random thing on Twitch. Guy with glasses. I've seen it on a TV show before. I've been a zombie on a couple things, but I haven't been a person on a TV show. But I have been a zombie. It was fun. Got makeup down in Georgia for a couple hours. Okay, no, it's a troll. And blocked. All right. So doing thumbnails. Wes and I, Wes, who's the writer on that book, and I think we think a lot of the same ways, in that we both have similar upbringings and then also similar education. We went through the same program.
Okay.
So I did not ask for thumbnails on everything, but I said, like, essentially when I was working with AJ on Wolf Hunter, I said, if there's anything you feel like you want to change up, or if you have any cool ideas, just send them to me first. Or if I if I have a page that's a little wonk, I might ask for a thumbnail on that. Or like, I want to be set up like a specific way. I have my artistic vision. Yeah, but he so he sent over like a couple thumbnails for a couple of different like style things where it may not be a traditional looking page, or going over like the details of again the specifics done for a scene or transition. And I have asked for like 1 or 2 changes, but not too many. But it's and I do find that process incredibly helpful because as a writer, especially when writing something like a comic, which is an ongoing series, you're going to be thinking about going forward, writing the next issue and then the next issue. So trying to cut out some of the grain on my camera here. So when you're doing all that, actually being able to see what's happening as it's being made, actually seeing your comic and your script become a real physical thing, it really does kind of help motivate you going forward. And also seeing how how the artist is interpreting your character also helps you understand how the reader is going to interpret your character. So that way, that might inform some decisions you make with how they act later on. So oh, go ahead.
Oh no, it's like when I design some of the characters, I have sorts of crazy ideas to separate these characters and make them kind of unique. Because a lot of them are kind of like, space guys with guns.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, let's try to separate them up. Not that they have superpowers, but just make them look a little different, so they're more recognizable. Yeah.
That's definitely very interesting on unnamed project. With how high concept it is, seeing how the illustrator interprets everything, because it's very comic booky, like 93 like style comic booky, which like 92, 93, like for like people who like Silver Age comics, they were like, the Bronze Age is like the least favorite for me. That was my jam. Like pouches, pectorals, just the most absurd thing you can throw on a dude, make it work.
And they never ever did say what they held in all those pouches.
My assumption is it was a little like like, oh god, wow, I forgot everything, man.
Oh yeah, I would assume it was like be bullets or whatever.
Be bullets.
I mean, Batman at least he had like I would assume it was gas pellets, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But some of them I just would assume.
Is it like dipsticks? Like those little like sugar thing to up into more sugar.
Those things are great. There was like it was like chalk, and then you dip them in and stuff. Yeah. So did you ever? Now, has any artist ever done? Now I don't know if they do this in comics that much, but in children's books they do book dummies. Do you know what those are?
I don't know if I do.
So book dummy is just basically taking, like for kids' book, you take all the pages and you just lay them out.
Yeah.
So you see the complete thing in a thumbnail sketch. And I don't know in comics. I think some might. Yeah. I think it just depends that you can see like page 1, 2, 3, all kind of put together side by side, so you can see how they flow from page to page.
Yeah, I've seen that done, but I haven't had that done on a project I've worked on. But I have seen that done. I don't know if they're called dummies in comics at all. I've heard someone refer to them as just thumbnail overview, because it's all the thumbnails and an overview.
The same thing. Yeah. The term for it. Yeah.
But I have seen that done before. And I think if you're working on something, like if you're doing something that's a lot more, like if you're someone like Alan Moore, where the continuity of your storyline is paramount because you need to know exactly where you're breaking it. I feel like that's where it really come in handy, but I think there are definitely some tools where if you're just using them for every project, you can be burning through efficiency.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, again, there are certain people that do much more pre-planning.
Mm-hmm.
A Kurtis on here has done a ton of pre-planning for his what was the shadow the shadow comic, the kung fu comic.
Yeah, man, I'm just forgetting everything. Is it Ghost?
I know I am too.
Is
I'm so sorry, Curtis.
Shadow Ghost? Ghost Shadow?
Shadow Ghost. Yeah, he's done a lot of preliminary and concepts.
You're cutting out.
Yeah, dying the main characters, but like everything else, I'll just make up on the page. It's probably not like the best idea, but there's been a lot of characters that I've put little roles that I'll just make up right in the page. I'm like, I'll just make it up. It's not gonna matter. But yeah, some people do have like entire tombs and tombs, so that helps the writer kind of figure out. I even think Quentin, the gentleman who's not here tonight, I think with his comic, he's doing a lot of preliminary sketches and stuff.
Yeah.
Going forward and stuff. Yeah, it's funny. There's an artist who's talked about getting trapped in that, like constantly creating the world, not making the story, like world building.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, yeah, but if you got enough world building, you can just make an RPG out of it. Sometimes I wonder, because I've seen comics like I think Usagi Jimbo got an RPG. I know Mouse Guard did.
Yeah.
And I wonder if they did, because I know the guy did Mouse Guard, like in the back of the stories, he would do tons of things about like the towns and the tavern and what they'd eat in the whole. And I assume he did so much as like I could just make a game out of this because I've got so much background, and I think he did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you can use that for bonus points.
Yeah. I know for me, I do a fair amount of pre-planning as well, but from a writer's perspective. So that is for starting out. I'm going to do a full. It's something kind of borrowed from Kevin Anderson and Brandon Sanderson for novel writing, but I just translated it into comics.
Okay,
and I this is the first project where actually I share that with everyone at the start because we just got everything like the green light, and everyone's like, just send whatever you got, get going on it. So I do like a chapter breakdown. So a novel is typically going to be like 30 chapters of 5,000 or 30 chapters 3,000 words or more, and then you just do like, what are the changes? Like, where does the chapter start? Where does it end? What's the change that happens there? So I broke that down where each issue I kind of broke into however many scenes, like 7 to 11 scenes. The idea of like an average of 2.3 pages per scene or whatever.
Okay.
And then like, where does the scene start? Where does it end? And the change there. So I went through and did that for like the entire run, issues 1 through 4. And then from there I got my character outlines. Then I did like a full like character Bible. Yeah, so like you know what a story Bible is, but for those of you who don't, the story Bible is kind of like the culmination of all the tools we're talking about, where Batman notoriously has a huge one because of how long Batman's been around. Where the Bible is everything that is sacred to the intellectual property. So it lists the characters, all their defining features, who they are, the settings, everything defines that, and the arcs that have been explored so far. And
a lot of TV shows. I remember, like Star Trek TV shows use them a lot because everyone who jumps on board knows everything. Yeah. The rules, the rule book, basically.
Yeah, it's the things that when you start working on this, since you're not the original creator, these are things that you can play with, but you have to play with them in the way that's set up, because if you don't, you're being dishonest to what came before you.
Yeah. And they even do that with the character designs. I know a lot of like especially in animation, they'll do character designs of reference. So what color is this? How many heads are they? How they'll do this is how big they are compared to everyone else and stuff. Which I tend to kind of draw my characters all the same height, which I need to stop doing. But I just, for some odd reason, I just always forget to make them shorter or bigger than others.
Everyone is 5'10". So I did the written portion of the character Bible. So this is just who they are, what they describe, what they look like, and what their character flaws are, and what their growth pattern looks like. So and then that got passed off to the artist so that he can interpret that and do his design off that, since he's this is something I'm co-creating with someone, so he is doing all the visual design for everything. And then going forward from that, I'll do an actual issue breakdown where I already did like they just like number the scenes, like scenes 1 through 8 in an issue. Then I'll actually go through and say like pages 1 through 2, this is what's happening. Pages 3 through 4, this is what's happening. Almost do like a Marvel style script, but it's just an outline. And then when I actually go through and do the actual scripting, I'm on autopilot because I have already written it out so many times in so many different ways. Even though I'm not actually going through the full write-out process, it's just a few sentences each time. But I've just created that mental image in my brain that I'm just regurgitating whatever, so it's very easy to autopilot out 22 pages of full script in like a day.
Yeah, you could just knock it out. Now, well, since most of it is pre-planned, you're just basically adding the details and nuances to how it's going to go.
And also the nice thing about doing that is essentially my final script is my third draft, essentially by that point. So any edits I need to do, I'm not having to go through and, you know, once I'm already all detailed out, going through and redoing my edits because I've already like seen all the points where the story could break or where things may not work. So then after that point, all I need to do is edit for dialogue, really. So I'm not doing any major changes once I have the majority of words down.
That's cool. Yeah, because I'm trying to think. I usually have not. I usually write. Do I write full scripts? I have written. I started writing another story, and I was writing that as a full script. And strange enough, I did that for me, even though I'd be the one I was planning on illustrating it, just so I remember what I was thinking at the time. Yeah. But it's kind of a weird script. It's kind of my own shorthand script of what I want. So
yeah. So
I will write like, you know, picture details, like this is 3/4 angle coming down, bird's eye shot. Which strangely enough, I've noticed in the script that I've got from my writer, he does not do that. And I think old comic scripts used to do like, there it goes, like a, you know, it's a 3/4 shot from the side.
Yeah.
You know, like detail. And there's a lot of, and I don't mind it, but there's a lot of writers who don't actually just say, you know, this panel, you know, man is running to door.
Yeah. Not
like, you know, this is a, you know, a worm's eye view looking up of a foot running to, you know, I guess it depends on the writer.
It's definitely more of like an older holdover to actually like go through and describe like the camera angle, because if you let the artist just kind of, you know, naturally figure out, like, because you're writing down like what your mental movie is doing, but when your artist reads that, their mental movie is going to be doing something slightly different. So when you combine the two, you're going to get like a mix between the two and create something new that you both and so I think that's kind of where the idea of not including, you know, the very specifics. I will like sometimes call for, you know, close up on a face if like the expression is really important, or instead of saying like worm's eye view, I might just say like we see the foot coming down on us or whatever, just something very like so it's especially now since a lot of artists are coming out from either a comic school or just being self-taught artists, so they may not be familiar with film terminology. And so I think that also kind of makes the field a bit more open. So they're not having to, you know, Google like what a Dutch angle is while they're
or like a pan shot. Most people figure a pan shot like a, you know, a you know, pull back and stuff. I have had to learn some of those just doing storyboarding, but it's and I think me and Roland even talked about the language that I know he doesn't like it when they treat comic books as movies. Like doing that stuff, and I understand. I think comics is its own language. I agree with him on that. But yeah, it's definitely, I've noticed reading some scripts that the scripts are give much more freedom to the artist when it used to not be that way. I mean, a lot of the communication was like, you know, this is what we want, specific instruction to artists because this is exactly what we want. And now it's much more of a collaborative, like, you know, like my writer, he's like, you know, make up cool stuff. I mean, I want this to be just as much as yours. And so yeah, it's kind of a difference, because especially when older scripts I would read, and like how to old scripts I get a hold of, they're very detailed sometimes in how they describe scenes.
Especially like with going forward with this new book where the person working with is getting co-creator credit. I do want them to be able to like more or less direct as much as they want, where because they're going to know a lot more about, you know, perspective and anatomy and, you know, composition
like that,
than I do. Whereas like I may know more about, you know, classic literary tropes, or you know, doing something in 4 acts, which is what our publishing schedule really kind of fits to, as opposed to like your traditional 3 acts. So writing a
Right.
bit more Shakespearean almost, as well as the rules of comedy and dialogue, and so yeah. So I because that's where my specialization is, whereas and their specialization is in the visual side of it. So being able to really focus in on me doing my part right while giving them, I don't need to micromanage them doing their part necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because do you ever write the Marvel method?
That's
never-
I do that for pre-writing. I did one of those like in school, but I'll do for my pre-writing. That's almost like how I do my breakdowns or my skeletons for individual issues, is doing a Marvel style script, just a little more condensed.
I think Roland's the only one in our company that does it. I don't know. He tried to ask my writer, and he's like, "No, I'm much more comfortable with the script." And I right now, I'm like, "Yeah, let me just use the script."
Yeah. I think also if you're doing something where you're co-creating, or you're doing, if your writer is also story-minded, doing something that is full script, that way when they can see the dialogue too, when they can like really in tune how that would present on a person's face.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's because the Marvel method, you may get, I mean, they lay it out or whatever, but yeah. And also, I think a full script also helps the writer hit the beats they want, like the hit points and what they're going to hit on the page and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I know, I'd be curious to work that way. Like I said, I haven't worked that way yet. I think some people, now, isn't Dean actually also writing and illustrating his book?
Yeah, Dean is going full Artur on Silverblade.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So I know Barb is not. She's doing a lot of the like inking and coloring, but the art is handled by somebody else. I think she's co-writing with somebody else.
Yeah, she's co-writing with Ari Salvatore. Not Salvatore. Ari Jones.
Yeah, Ari Jones. That's
Ari Salvatore, known for the Drist books, is not working with
know.
Silverline as much as we want him.
Yeah, yes, come join us.
Yeah.
So, speaking of strange things, I know in the other one they were speaking of pop culture stuff. So, I mean, so for communication style, do you ever try to steal anything you see in movies or whatever and try to distill them on the page or in your writing?
I may try to steal feelings.
That's kind of like what
but like or like the way something makes me feel. So like something I'll say do it more with games, just kind of like, because I feel like in a game you can get a really like your grandiose, like the things that apply to your sense of something being grandiose is much more present in the game because you are there experiencing it. And so I'm doing something very high concept. I may try to figure out like what sort of cues are they hitting, and how can I hit those same cues but in the language of comics. But one thing I stole, kind of going into Wolf Hunter, but more so in my own my published writing, was the sense of kinetic energy in the raid, particularly in like the it's like a elevator hallway scene where you just had the team and then the occupiers, and it's kind of met up, and it's just this, everyone's just throwing like slugs, like, really tied up, and so you're just like,
it was like completely, it was a side shot. I think it was a side shot the whole way through. Yeah,
and you're just really feeling like everything hitting, and the fact that like there's this bam, 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 bam going through, and you're feeling like all that as you're sitting there watching it. And like, how can I have a panel give me that same feeling?
Yeah, that's sometimes what I try. I think you're right. I think it's more feeling. Kinetic energy is something I really try to. I've been watching some anime. One of the Evangelion does a lot of. He does a lot of really weird perspective shots. The way he'll set up, which I was noticing why his 4 new movies just came out. But like, it was interesting getting the emotions, and like there was just 2 people talking in a car. Yeah, but instead of like putting it on their face, what you would expect, he would put like the camera like behind, like say like the right hip, kind of looking at their lap.
Yeah.
So you would hear them talking, but you would see maybe somebody fiddling with their phone or something.
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting idea, and I'm not sure what story, but I'd like to steal But it was very sort of like matter of fact, and that's but a lot of Japanese manga and anime will show more of like little bits and pieces of environment while somebody's talking, or like they'll show, instead of showing the whole scene, they show bits and pieces of a scene to kind of just draw the whole scene. But it was really different because it did have this weird feeling. Like they showed these two women, a Masato, and I think it was Rusko, this doctor, and this lady going down this like elevator, and they're sitting in a chair almost like the ski lift,
Yeah.
but going down. And all they did was they just had the camera pulled back, and they showed these two sitting in this chair going down, and the whole conversation was just that still shot of them moving down the shaft. I was like, I wonder. I mean, it was weird because it almost felt like you were eavesdropping rather than being in the scene, and it was very. I thought, like, and that was just kind of interesting the way setting that stuff. I'm like, that's the idea of the way where you put the camera, you can get different emotions from. And but movies, especially The Raid, Jackie Chan's another one to watch, like kinetic energy. She wanted to like get that energy on it. He's another one. And I've always kind of told people, if you want to get that energy of like the fighting or whatever, draw your characters like purposely a little off balance.
Yeah.
So if somebody's trying to throw a kick, looks like they're about to fall over just barely because it looks like they're straining. There's a lot of because I think a lot of comics are very posed, and the posing's cool, but it looks very stiff. And I think some comics I've seen, the anime actually I think does this really well in a lot of their stuff, where they throw a punch or throw a kick, and it looks like they're not really almost like trained, like they're just throwing it, ad man. And so that's something that, watching those, because Jackie Chan he just always looks like he's off balance. I mean, I know he's not, but he looks like he's just flailing around, and I'm like, that was just So there's sometimes, but even to write that into it, like write those scenes into it, it's how would you, strangely enough, have you ever in your writing reference movies or other things? Like I think I did this for the writer. I was talking, I can't remember, like certain scenes or certain ways I see things, and I would like make a link to a clip or a movie saying this is a reference, this is an idea of what I've seen. To give them a visual clue. Have you ever done that for your artists?
Yeah, especially with Wolf Hunter, with it being like, historical fiction, like there are things that we're breaking history at certain points, so for people to buy in how we're breaking it, getting small details on certain things helps us earn the reader's trust. So we have a Pinterest board where it's like, these are things that are referenced, and then I'll like be able to pull through and like, there's this like pin for this model of gas mask, or here's this pin for this model of engine or whatever. And so that helps. For new project, I think in my character outlines I did have a reference to something. Yes, where someone's character design, I mentioned their aesthetic is Nier Automata meets Bloodborne.
That is an interesting mix.
So I'm like, this is what their clothes look like. It's more Nier Automata, and this is what their weaponry and their skill set looks like. It's more Bloodborne. And so I'm like, this is what this character generally vibes with. So
this is almost a complete fantasy story.
Yeah, this is absurdly high concept. This is it's a space opera mythology.
That sounds cool.
And on the YouTube chat, Jackson Rennick says Gil Kane was good with kinetic energy. I agree.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
There was some artists that were really, really good. I'm trying to think that I always thought old Mark Silverstreet was really good at gestural kinetic. He's gotten kind of stiff over the years, but his old stuff was good at just that sort of very loose style. Gil Kane is one too. Yeah.
I think in terms of like writing like kinetic energy, Matt Fraction, especially like in his Hawkeye book. He's really good at writing out the way that people would present in that way, like the subtle changes in personality that'll happen during like different levels of tension, and just the way that that'll apply to people. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. There is who did the Ultimates? I think his name was Brian Hitch. Was it Hitch? Ultimates comic. Brian Hitch was the artist in the original Ultimates comics, I think from the 90s. He did a pretty good job making things look cinematic, but he almost did a good job of making, like, drawing the action on the in between frames, like you would think of animation.
Yeah.
Like instead of the punch starting here and then ending here, he would draw it like halfway through or something.
Yeah.
So he was actually pretty good at getting that sort of weight and stuff behind it, and I thought he did some cool stuff like Captain America. There was one, but when you said Hawkeye, I remember there was a scene in, I think, the second book, where, like, maybe it was the first one, like Hawkeye Black Widow, like taking out this terrorist like faction, and it was like these pages, but it was pretty cool. I mean, it looked he somehow is able to make things look very cinematic, like they're in motion or whatever. So he's actually pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard. Some artists, I used to like the more posed superhero stuff, like old Jim Lee and stuff, but now anymore I think I stray more towards some sort of motion or action. If you can distill that's usually what gets me excited.
My favorite dude. Just something down here. Yes, I do. I will forever prostrate myself until we can get him to do something, or at least I can get him to do something with me. But Rocky Kim, the guy who did this run of
Force.
X-Force. Are we going to focus? We're going to work on focus. Okay. We're just going to reflect the light. But his style of stuff, when it comes to like the energy of it, but also just the stylize of it, like it was superheroes, but it didn't feel like superheroes. It felt like, I mean, it's the same thing like the way Kojima makes spies feel, where there's just something extra to it.
Yeah. Well, he always had a way of just making. I mean, the funny thing is whoever time I played Metal Gear, it just, I mean, you really realize, I mean, this whole thing is really a superhero version of, like, spies. But he didn't see, because they all have cool powers and stuff, or cool technology, or whatever. But all of his spies or enemies are pretty memorable. The one I need to play again, I only played once, was number 4. So I remember the least.
Yeah. It's like, isn't really, like, the connective, the way he does like the little like rain effects around Rampart there, and like it's Cable. You can know it's Cable, but it doesn't feel like Cable necessarily. I feel in the same way like when you actually get like dialogue scenes and the way people are like done. They move like people, not like superheroes. Especially like Atomics there. Yeah.
I think I've seen a little bit. The other guy who's one of my, I think he's probably my, one of my all-time favorite artists is Larry Stroman, and he did a lot of Alien Legion, and he was really good at getting motion, but also had this sort of graphic design element to it that was very unique and very different. I've never seen anything like it. Haven't seen a lot of people try to copy his stuff. I think but he would do weird, like the weird border. He would do little graphic designs between the borders that were really different and never. But he did a good job of motion or whatever. But yeah, that's the stuff like that when he was looked like he was punching Cable or whatever. I mean, that looked very kinetic, like that energy. It's almost like a feeling, and even when you write it, it's almost like sort of you have to display that sort of feeling of like what is happening or whatever to get that.
Yeah, you have to really sell like the fact that there's impact happening and it needs to resonate in some way.
I will say, strangely enough, I would say it is harder to impart a specific emotion and feeling in comics than it is a movie, because you don't have sound and you don't have words, and sound is important. But I will say that if you can actually accomplish it, it's much more effective because it's a still shot. You're basically hitting the exclamation point. Exactly. So it's much more effective, but it's a little harder because you're lacking certain elements that movies have.
Yeah, comics are a unique skill set to develop because you are... it's a weird matchup of limitations, but that presents you with some really unique opportunities though to execute upon them. Yeah,
it's definitely a language I never saw. It's weird because it is almost in a way you have to kind of do the idea of like the silent movie or whatever, because there's you can write words and people can hear it in their heads. But yeah, there's definitely, and even the quiet scenes. I think comics are really good at hitting those quiet moments. If you can hit that one scene in certain comics, I'm trying to think of any now that people have done, which is like, oh yeah, they resonate. I mean, like the classic scene, and Akira, the classic image of him walking to his bike.
Yeah.
It's just a very quiet scene, but that whole scene just basically epitomizes that entire series.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's very simple and to the point.
Yeah. That's. I mean, there's so many like fantastical moments in Akira, like the manga or the movie, but anyone who's like super into it, the thing they always put to like their MySpace banner picture was the shot of him walking to his bike.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
And it was just there was not really action. It was just a sort of idea. I mean, he just like was so iconic. And so I think still art like comics are great at making those iconic moments. And it's something that is like a visual that sticks. Movies can do that, but it's more like a scene, like only so many minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Warren Ellis has some really good. He's really good with pacing in those quiet panels where it's just where nothing is being said, but you know there's a lot happening.
Didn't Warren Ellis work a lot with Frank Quietly? Was that the one that he collaborated with a lot?
I think so.
I think he did, because I think Frank Quietly was the one who did like a bunch of the new X-Men.
Yeah.
When they did the new X-Men series. He was really good at displaying the sort of... I think he worked well with Warren Ellis's writing style.
Yeah.
Because he had that sort of like... his characters he could like read a lot of emotion and stuff in the characters just sitting in the panel, like the way Cyclops just be there, whatever. I've actually in my own comic have done that, where I've actually have panels in conversations where somebody's talking and I'll just draw a panel of them just like quiet, like no words, because like they're thinking, they're pausing. So actually trying to write a pause in the comics by just drawing a panel with the same characters but no words, and he talks again. And just seeing how that plays. It's kind of like music. I mean, pauses are incredibly effective in music, if they're done right.
Yeah. There's Mike McCone. There's a book called Endless Wartime, and there's a quiet panel where or there's a panel where there's narration happening off to the sides, but it's a 3-panel page, and the top panel Cap just says no, and then second panel reflecting on people's planning or whatever, he just says one word, and then it cuts to him almost kind of like half fumbling his helmet. And there's just a lot of development there than Cap that you won't see anywhere else. Seeing Cap fumble something almost, or like kind of toss something when he's trying to process something and he's not talking about it. It's just Cap thinking and, being the tough thinking soldier that he's supposed to be. But you actually really see that.
Yeah, I think when you can especially with superheroes and people that are supposed to be like Captain America or something, that is supposed to be like these stoic, unflinching or kind of like perfected, and then we have them fumble or whatever, and if you can show that visually, is super impactful.
Yeah.
When you have them like maybe stutter or something, or say that. Yeah, I've been trying to do a little more like using the scene with transition and sequential, which like showing like my hand opening in panels, like animation frames. I've been trying to use that to show emotion. I have a character, this king, who finds out his daughter is kidnapped, and you show him looking stern, and then he slowly gets sad. I kind of show that panel very subtly. And I think those tools are effective. I think people, if you overuse them, this is same thing. I think like in movies, I think a lot of people have used gore and stuff, but I think they've overdone the gore, that now when they show it, it's not effective. Game of Thrones, I think, kind of did that with like, you kind of lost the punch of showing. You show it all the time, then it's not a huge deal. And I think sometimes if you leave those alone and only show those sort of scenes when they matter, it's much more effective.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the shark in Jaws, classic. They don't show it until the very end.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sorry, my phone is going off, so I'm going to put it on silent.
That's all right.
So, but I have friends who talk and have this ding dong. So, but yeah, it's funny in video games you can get almost different kinds of emotions because you're controlling the emotion. I sometimes have looked how they've done that stuff in Metal Gear. I think it's the 4th one when he's crawling through the radiation. and you're making him crawl through the radiation tunnel.
Yeah.
I almost tried to figure out ways of like if you could do something as effective like that in a comic.
Yeah.
If you could take that scene and like split like and I think I've seen people do it before, like the same panel, like a repeated motion.
Yeah.
That
is also just in terms of also like it's a masterpiece in tension building, because going from you get this high octane sequence boarding Mother Base, and then you have all this blah blah, and then it starts building up on the tunnel sequence, and then you think you do it, but then you're not really there, and then it turns to the slugfest with liquid on top of, and it's just pure kinetic energy, but it's just this unrelenting like butt clench the entire time. So, yeah.
He does a really good job, but it's strange to know, this is in comics, this is why I started to gain a love of like backgrounds. I know a lot of comic artists sometimes don't always have to draw backgrounds. That's the most of me. What do you like to draw, Lisa? Oh, I don't always draw backgrounds. But I started realizing, especially playing video games like Metal Gear and Solid, like the backgrounds actually are what make the game. That's the most important part. I mean, your character's not even important. It's what you're interacting with is the most important. So I started kind of taking that into effect or whatever. And I was always really liked how Hideo Kojima would he would make his backgrounds unique. He would add little references, or like his infamous posters, or like some sort of little. He would make them unique, that the backgrounds or the environments you're in had a little sense of history. Yeah. And so that's how I started writing a lot of my backgrounds, try to give a sense of history or something behind it.
Yeah. It helps add. There's a rule that you learn in taking writing classes, in that the world doesn't exist only during the time that you're writing it. So like there has to be something that happened before the story started. There has to be something that happened before your character was even like born or created, and there's stuff that's going to happen afterwards. So unless you're doing the Wheel of Time, in which case the point is that there is no before or after. But doing those little things where it might just be a little something added to the wall or whatever, but it that something happened there before the story took place there, or
right, there are things.
Yeah.
And I try to add those in when I draw backgrounds with I try to think of like the history and stuff. This is always kind of like, and maybe this was me, but I remember like, and this is only for certain storylines, I remember people would always be like, they wanted to know what happened to like Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi. Like what happened to him? And I'm like, he lived happily ever after. But there's a lot of people who want to know what these characters, like the little like what happened at the birth all the way through death. And it's like, yeah, but you were really only telling one snippet of the life that's important.
Yeah, I think.
And so
I think I love the Star Wars Legends lore, because you do kind of fill in some of those answers. Meeting Mara Jade, which I think not having her in the new canon is a tragic sin. But
that was Luke's love interest, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Yeah.
And she also had her own unique story. She was she didn't exist just to be Luke. She had her own history. She was, she had this horror world before she met Luke, and she also had like her horror world that went on when her and Luke weren't together, and that really also made her unique in that we weren't. She was her own person that we saw a part of, but we never really saw all of all the time. It's a real person, I think a sign of really good world building is when you leave and you do like you're thinking like, I want to see what happens next. I want to see what happened beforehand. Like that's how I felt after seeing John Wick 1. In fact, like the world building was done so minimally but so effectively that afterwards I'm like, there's a whole lot here to unpack and I want to see all of it.
Yeah, John Wick. That's what you're talking about, John Wick.
Yeah.
They did a fantastic job of hinting at it. That was the one movie that I just thought it was another action movie. When I saw it, there was like, especially I think the hotel really added this whole like, well, this is whole weird assassin. I mean, what? Like, what is going on? And I remember just that, like you said, like I wanted to hear about like what is all these connections. You have the gold coins, all these, and that guy's really good at world building, which surprised me because most action movies there is none of that. Each
Yeah.
guy gets, revenge, but because it was like, his dog gets killed. Okay, there was kind of a tongue in cheek. He's killing everyone because his dog. But then he did this whole world building thing that made it much more interesting.
Yeah.
And so I think there's always a part where I almost kind of like it, like hinted at. Sometimes I like certain things can play, and I do like a sense of mystery. I remember when they talked about. They finally revealed the origin of Wolverine. I remember reading an interview. I think it was Claremont, but I'm not sure. That they were never going to reveal his history. That it was always going to be a mystery. And they asked, "Well, why did you do it now?" And they're like, "Well, we knew the movies were going to do it, and so we had to beat him to the punch." And so we got the origin Wolverine. And a lot of people feel like, I know a lot of the writers felt like that kind of ruined that character a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of took out some of the mystery behind him and stuff. So I think there's also like good stuff to hint at too, like in the background. You do a lot of stuff in the background, like you were talking about, like you can hint that stuff, not really explain it, but you get a sense that there's something else that has happened here before. They're gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think also a lot of that. I mean, trying to communicate that to a team. I think you can hint to certain things as the writer, but I think that is something that it's really hard to communicate. So really, everyone has to do their own little part to add those parts of history, where the writer has to throw in those little tidbits or like throw lines of dialogue where someone references something that you're never going to show on a panel. It's just something there. Or if you're the artist, you're like, oh, actually I had an idea for like, what if there's a band? I'm just going to do like their poster, like this is a band that exists in this universe now.
yeah. Well, I mean, like even. We said we were talking about Appleseed. We'll talk about Appleseed.
Yeah.
That guy hints at all. I mean, he made his own gun company in the books. I can't remember the name of it. But then he would talk about like Poseidon, like I think it was a corporate state in Japan. Japan turned to literally like a oligarchy, a corporate state and stuff. But he would kind of hint at the world, but he would also kind of leave it a sense of mystery, not completely reveal everything.
Yeah.
And I always kind of like that. I think you should only give so much, but not. It's funny because when people want to know everything, it's like, well, doesn't it kind of take all the fun out of it sometimes? Isn't it half the story enjoying the story and the other half maybe interpreting a little bit on some stuff? This
theory crafting. Yeah.
It's funny. I've talked to a lot of, people who like stories, and I've noticed like two people fall into two camps. Ones that don't like I'm a big fan of the Matrix movies. But my minor was in philosophy, so I got a lot of the philosophy what they're talking about. But I liked a lot of that, like the idea that the movie's letting me interpret, put my own spin. Like they give me so much information, and then the rest of it's up to your own interpretation about what is going on. I really like that because I feel like I'm getting something out of the movie.
Yeah.
And sometimes when movies like hand me everything and just basically tell me exactly, I get kind of bored because I feel like I'm just a passive observer instead of being interactive. And so sometimes I know that kind of like, but now there are a lot of people that don't like that. And I don't find many people that go back and forth. They either like simple, straightforward movies or they like more ambiguous movies that you can interpret your own interpretation on.
Yeah. I think also in the Twitch chat, part goes DJ. One of my buds is popping in there. How you doing, Parrot? One of the things that I think really made Blade Runner as special as it is one, like the sense of realness to the history, but then also the discussion or question you have afterwards about Rick Deckard. Like, what exactly does that mean? And then you get a partial answer in Blade Runner 2049, which I think a lot of people got hung up on. But I think what redeemed that for me and for some other people it's been redeemed for is at the end where they're kind of like, well, no, everyone's lying. It's kind of leaning. Everyone, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You don't like you thought you got answers, but you didn't.
I like 2049. I had a friend who's a big Blade Runner fan that he's very much any movie he likes. He just doesn't like anything added to it. When they did 2049, I'm like, does it really need it? But after seeing what they did, I thought the storyline was interesting.
Yeah.
I sometimes there was always a part of me like I don't really even think they needed to add Deckard into the new movie.
I don't think they need to either. I think it was solid without him, but I think it is kind of did that there to follow up and add to
universe.
It served a purpose in adding to the questions presented in the first movie that were kind of being explored more in the second movie, and they're kind of saying like the questions are still applicable and still need to be asked.
And I know there was like, because I know there was a scene where he meets like the replicant resistance fighters and stuff, and they added like 2 or 3 animated shorts. So like if you buy the Blu-ray or whatever, 2049, there's these like 2 or 3 animated shorts that they like go in between that that explain the blackout that they reference in 2049, and they reference some other things too. In these little animated shorts, and then you watch those, and you watch 2049. Oh, okay, now I see where they're going at or whatever. The blackout is one thing they really reference, and then apparently there's supposed to be a Blade Runner cartoon coming out.
Oh, maybe I think I heard something about that, but I'm not entirely sure if we got
I don't know if it's a series
about.
or a movie or something. I know they wanted to from the movie. It seemed like the whole replicant resistance fighter thing was supposed to go into a 3rd movie. They were obviously leaving some sort of open-ended things that the Ryan Gosling character was encountering that would go into a 3rd movie, but apparently I don't think it made enough money or something. I'm not sure, and then it didn't go forward. My favorite part of that movie was Ryan Gosling's connection with that artificial AI, that girl that was like his, because that felt very much like that felt actually probably the most in spirit with the original movie, that sort of isolation that the first movie was really good at getting. That people just kind of feeling like they're all stuck together, but all kind of alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that one. Yeah, I'd be curious to see what they do with the cartoon. There's a part of me that I almost like, should they leave it alone? Oh, I don't know. I mean, you could always watch the original Blade Runner on its own. You don't have to enjoy the sequels, just like Star Wars. I mean, that's why I find people go like, the prequels ruined like Star Wars. I'm like, you don't have to watch the original prequels. You could just watch the original movies and enjoy them. I don't know why people get so hung up. Like, if they make stuff you don't like, then just don't consider it part of your canon or whatever and just ignore it.
I mean, I'll talk about this forever, but my canon for Star Wars is, the Legends lore in the books and all that weird stuff.
Yeah, like Revan and stuff. Yeah, like that's the stuff that everyone loves. So I'm just like, this is why people like, if Disney is, when they made like the 3 movies after Return of the Jedi, they ruined Star Wars. I'm like, I don't watch those. I don't personally don't like them, so I just consider them not part of Star Wars. So I just erase them.
It's gone from the memory banks.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where this communication tools we're talking about really come in. Is there are some different moments where you can tell in the Disney Star Wars where they scrapped the Bible, where they didn't look at the tools that are like in Twitch chat, Pirate Ghost DJ, we kind of got off topic, but it's all good content. Saying mystery in a story equals fan theory crafting. Mystery in a story plus an Easter egg / references equals fan theory crafting cubed. And also, he loved that connection, Ryan Gosling's character and the AI. It kind of reminded me of the movie Her. But that's it touched on all the same themes. And
there was another movie, kind of in the vein of Her, where this guy made an artificial female robot, and she's like, it ended up like he was making multiple ones. I think it was a kind of not a low budget. I can't think of it. It was like some guy in a compound, and the woman, I think, eventually found out that she was artificially intelligent, and she didn't know it. She didn't know she was a robot. It's gonna drive me nuts.
Was that
kind of like
Ex Machina?
That's it.
Okay, yeah,
that's it. That was kind of the same vein of like making that. Yeah. Oh, that was a pretty good movie too. But yeah, the it's funny. Do you write, when you communicate like subplots in your story that may lead to other things, how much of that do you communicate to the artist?
I don't know if I communicate a whole lot of it intentionally towards the artist. I try to communicate as much of it to the editor, though, so the editor knows why things are present. And then because of that, they also get shared with the artist. But I do think it is important for, if I mention something's going to come back later, if the artist decides to emphasize it in some way, like a physical trope or something. And then you also kind of get that moment where something's emphasized, but it's not pertaining to the major plot. So you're kind of wondering, like, what is this? What's it going to do later? And then the next issue does something, but it does that same thing where it creates that Easter egg. So for like a month, or in our case, the 2-3 months that we have in our issue cycle, readers like, what the is going on?
It's funny. I will say in comics, I think a little bit of the subplot has been lost with this sort of 4-issue limited series that seems all comics going to follow.
Yeah.
Chris Claremont was a master at it. The last comic I saw that did a really good job of laying plots that would come later was Invincible.
Yeah.
Really good. They would lay things, and then like 20 issues later, it's like, do you remember this? And it's like that, and you're like, wait, what? So, he did a really good job of that. And I don't know how much they even did it at The Walking Dead. I know Invincible, he really did a good job of like the subplots. But it seems like with 4 issues or so, like even if you were to do a subplot in like Wolf Hunter, I mean that's only 4 issues, so that would be would you put that for other?
Yeah, Wolf Hunter is actually only 3. The new
Three? Okay.
the new book is going to be 4.
Okay.
But Wolf Hunter 3, there's one subplot, but Wolf Hunter is done in I keep on saying it's a John le Carre style thing. So also like if you read Altered Carbon, it's kind of the same thing where a lot of it is the character asking questions and not getting answers. And so that's the thing is that Captain Willard is really good at reading people. That's why he's a great commander, because he can like look at it as like the airmen in his wing and know like something's bothering you. You're not going to be 100%. I need you to talk to me right now, and really get to the bottom of that.
Yeah.
So that's why he gets picked to become the spy hunters, because he can read people like that. But we've presented a situation where everyone is lying in some way, even if like there is a answer on the table. The fact that the answer is not even being hinted at, it may infuriate the reader to some point, but that's kind of the idea, is that you have a character that everyone is lying to, and he's just trying to figure out like what's going on. So it's the same thing where there's just going to be a lot of slow burn until everything comes to a head. And so at that point, his character will progress his inner story as well as the external story. Because there's a lot of things aren't happening the way he needs them to, because that is going to feel a little... you're going to feel the same infuriation that he's feeling, I feel like, at some points, which is intentional. With the new book, it's 4 issues, and there's lead character and 2 major supports. And they each have their own personal growth they have to undergo. But that one's using the kind of stealing the sage role and applying it to everyone from the hero's journey. Where they, it's the character that supports the hero or the quester, and in some ways states the lesson learned or states the theme given. Or the question presented, so they each present that to each other in a different way.
Interesting.
And then they internalize that, and then they reapply that into the main story. So everything's all connected when there is subplots happening, but it all kind of ties back in. I'm stealing also Matt Mercer's idea of train wreck storytelling, where everyone is on their own journey. It just all happens to lead them onto this one thing where it all collides together, and they all have to learn something at the same time.
Strangely enough, one that was really good at putting a lot of that stuff together was that comic Lock and Key. If you ever read it.
Yeah.
At the end, he was able to tie things I didn't think he would tie up or whatever. Everything kind of came to a head, and like everything was wrapped up. I'm like, oh wow, okay, yeah. But yeah, it's if you can do that, like basically have the train wreck where everything's meeting, like there's certain subplots, like what is that going on?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, he would say something, you're not really sure, and then at the end, it all comes to fruition.
Yeah.
Or whatever. That could be hard to do, but if you pull it off, that could be, people love that stuff. All the stuff comes in. Yeah, it's funny. We've been talking about communication. I think we talk more about communication as storytellers, whatever. I think with storytelling, like communication between teams or whatever, I think it's mostly just like internet.
Oh yeah, actually,
I'm
tools
trying
of
to
it.
think
Yeah.
of like tools. I was thinking like ways of communicating. I think I've actually heard, weren't there like certain writers and stuff that would like act out certain things for people? And
Yeah. So the way I present a communication to, like a tool is in like a deliverable or something that you might create to pass around, but also like the actual the physical tools you might use to communicate with your team. But yeah, there are some people who I can't remember names off the top of my head, but there are like some stories about guys in the Marvel bullpen where they'd be talking about like Hulk doing something, and he would like go over to like to the artist table and like do this, and then he'd throw something over there and run over. And he's like, it's like that. And the artist's like,
yeah,
I didn't get my pens back, but okay.
I can totally see something. I mean, I know like an acting they do, but the same thing. I know they do a lot of that in animation. They do a lot of acting in mirrors or whatever. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's some artists that will actually work with mirror, like their own handheld mirror to get like facial, acting.
Babs Tarr, who did Batgirl. I think when she was at the DC bullpen, she had like a mirror, and then she also had like one of those like little wooden doll things. So she'd like do something with the doll, then she'd do it with her hand in the mirror, and then she'd like try to figure out like where it all lines up. And so there's just a lot of like pantomiming back and forth before you got something down on the page.
Yeah, communication. I mean, it seems like there's technical tools, but yeah, just the communication between artists or whatever. And it's funny. Do you, as a writer, do you worry about the inkers and colorists that much? Or do you consider the artists more responsible for them? Or you just kind of let them do their own thing?
For certain things, like where it's, I guess for some things I would not, but for these two books, for certain aspects I do, particularly the colorist. One, for Wolf Hunter being historically accurate. If we get something wrong, whatever. We already people are gonna freaking chew us out. So I talked to with the artist on colorist on email about the paint patterns for Hawker Hurricanes, the British fighters that are featured in the first issue, and like getting the right camouflage pattern and the right like colors used to make that camouflage pattern that every Hawker Hurricane was essentially coated with.
Yeah, but that could be important. Yeah, but I don't know how. Yeah, so you do kind of deal with the colorists more a little bit to get the colors.
Yeah, then but with like certain other things, I may not touch. But like then when you get to the new book that's being worked on, because of its ties to mythology and elemental energy, there are like color patterns. Like there is like a color kit for featured characters. Outside of that, like spaceships, building design, whatever floats your sci-fi goat. Of course, there's some things that are going to be like intuitive, like Mars is going to be red and dusty, but
yeah. I mean, not getting around those. Yeah, because I know something. Do you send like? Would you send, like, even though it's fantasy, would you send references that you like to them? Like, you're sending historical references for your Wolf Hunter because of historical accuracy. Would you send references of stuff you like say, like Destiny art books or something, to this guy, this is the sort of style or idea I'm going for? Or would you leave that up to the artist?
I'd leave that up to the artist. Like I said, there are some things where, like, the items themselves, like, one person who... It's because, like, the middle image is so weird in my head that, like, I want to match this where, like I said, like... There are Nier Automaton meets Bloodborne, like that specifically. Like, this is a really weird mashup. But for a lot of these other characters, I might say, this person is wearing Centurion style armor, but almost more scalloped, and then they can figure out what that means. Or, but then also, like, there's some items where it's a sci-fi take on historical items, like a spatha, which is a ancient Roman lawn sword. I'll just mention that it's a spatha, and then they can kind of take that however they want to.
They could look it up and get make a variation on it or whatever. Yeah. Because sometimes I will say as an artist, sometimes I always, am conscious of like, am I hitting what the writer wants? And so far, it's been good. He didn't personally. I sent more reference to him when I was designing how I envisioned this, and he seemed to be more on board. I think we stole decent stuff from Aliens or whatever for series. One of the main characters was a male, and it was like I was like, well, we should have a female. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if she was like this 50-year-old like Vasquez type character, like she's like some ardent space marine or whatever, but she's like in her 50s, like this older lady. If you ever read the original Akira manga, Akira, you had that older, bigger lady. I can't remember her name. That was like the guardian of that one girl. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that was such a cool character. I try to draw or like design really eclectic characters, not so more stereotypical ones, but ones that seem a little weird or off the wall. And then more interesting, at least to me. He seemed to be on board with everything, so I was happy about that. So, but yeah, I think it's funny. I think writers, you do use some visuals to communicate with your artists, but I think artists will probably send more visuals to you to get the idea of what they're going for or whatever.
Yeah, I think also that's kind of coming like, where especially like where artists are going to find a lot more like visual reference on that, where we're almost kind of hyper focused on the how does this character present emotionally or how they present as a personality. Yeah. So when you're now that you're collaborating with another writer, are you finding that you like having the level of freedom, or do you wish they like almost going to give you more input at the start, or do you think like if they had just given you like a concept and just told you to go to town, how would you think you would find like your happy medium in that?
It's weird. I probably would dig their brain a little bit to try to pinpoint exactly what they're going for. Of course, I, like any creative endeavor, I'm always envisioning this war. I mean, if you give me the script and have me read it with no visual references, I'm certainly going to start seeing this in my head. Seeing if what I see in my head is what you see in your head is usually try to my goal. And I try to get pretty close to the writer because I want the writer to get his vision on the paper too. I mean, I want it to be completely this is, so I try to send some stuff to him as well. And to try to get it. So the one thing I addressed is working with the writers. I'm actually enjoying the fact that I have to worry about writing and storytelling. Like I have to worry about storytelling, but a lot of it's written down for me. So I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of just sit back and draw. I mean, when I'm doing my own stuff, I have to think like, okay, this panel to panel, how's this gonna go, break down or whatever. But with him, I can just kind of read the script and generally get like, okay, this is what he's going for, and then go to town.
Yeah.
A little bit more freedom in that way. It's a little bit more freedom for sure. So
for a writer, that also does help because if we're doing our own art or whatever, then you also think about like, okay, I can say this, but how am I actually going to like translate that out? Whereas where I can like, okay, I'm going to say this, and the artist is going to interpret that, and what they get is the translation of that, and it's going to be something neither of us really expected, but it's going to be perfect. Part had just said something, and then our chat had actually died on restream, so sorry, Part, but I've lost that. Yeah, let me see there if I can actually reload it. Docs, chat. It's resyncing. We lost that. Okay, well, if you repost it, we might see it. Something about working with this current client. My part is also a visual arts person. I hate when a person I'm working with just tells me, surprise me, like, no, I need feedback, bro. Okay, yes. Yeah. There are some things where, if they're asking for specific input, this happened with Wolf Hunter, where they're thinking, like, what if they got, like, a telltale scar, or something like that.
Right.
And then just thinking about the triangle of weird, you can only bounce things out so much with a character before they become too weird, too outlandish. Like, because he's not a wounded style character, but he's already lost a leg at this point. So if he's lost a leg and then also has additional deformities, he starts to fall more into the wounded archetype of character, where it's more about the psychological aspect of it, and the leg is just something that adds tension when needed.
Right, the fact he doesn't have a leg or whatever. Yeah.
And so that's when I'll say, like, no, let's not do that. But if he does something like, hey, so I got a couple ideas on panel layout. I could do it like this, or I could do it like this. I kind of like this one a little better. Do you have any ideas? And I'll say, like, do what your gut tells you. If you think it looks better that way, do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I've actually done stuff with clients, and I will give this sort of, be very, very careful, and depending on the client, how you do this. But sometimes, if a client is undecided or doesn't know, I will actually give them an example if I know what they don't want.
Yeah.
And so if you give an example what they don't want, all of a sudden they become much more clean, or like, oh, I don't really want that. I want this. I'm like, oh, now you do. So it's almost kind of pigeonholing them into like, you kind of know what they want, but they're undecided. So once you give them what they don't want, they're like, they get scared, like, oh, he's going to do this. No, you want this. And then, and I don't know if an artist has ever done that. I will do that only in rare occurrences, but I have done that before. We're kind of showing them stuff. I'm like, I don't think you want to go here. And then they immediately, oh, no, I want to go.
That's, use that as like a sales tactic, or as a tactic in if you're doing like a, not a customer service, but a service-oriented position, like me doing like analysis and underwriting. Like, I need people to make affirmative decisions, because otherwise I'm messing up their finances. So the thing is where you give someone, if you want someone to make any choice at all, you give them an A or a B, but be fully willing to accept like C through Z. But you're just trying to give them like oh, I need to pick something, but neither of these work for me. I want something else. Actually, I'm just going to say what I want, and you're like, great, that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I notice when you give art, and I don't know if anyone does the concept, like when I look at people who do concept art, like you were doing with the panel, if they do, like you were saying, A through CD, like all these, if there's very minor variances between those, you are not helping that client.
Yeah.
You gotta have some pretty major differences between the examples.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, I like all of these except the shirts are different colors. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, yeah. So I usually try to like do pretty different.
Yeah. Like
you
big
know.
details. Like you gotta want to be like, if they come to me and like, all right, so I have this 5-panel layout or whatever, and like, okay,
Right.
I could do this in where this panel bleeds in this one, or this one is set into here, and then so I have these two options, and then I say, well, actually, I was kind of wanting more of almost like a not quite a stained glass, but like a bleed effect. I'm thinking kind of like more like a bleed effect. And they're like, oh, I didn't think about that. Great. But it's the fact that they they give you like two different options, and even though I'm not going for something that's either one of them, just being presented like picking something and going for it.
Right.
That's so you get the feedback needed. Yeah.
It is. I will say it is very. It is weird to me to think how fast art is made nowadays, considering ancient history or just history in general. When most art and books took a very long time to make, I sometimes wonder if the fast decision making is better or more hurtful when you see people make very arbitrary decisions very quickly on things and then don't give it the sort of time and reflection it may need. Because I've seen some people. Not some. I've seen a lot of people start up with some really cool ideas, and as they quit making these snap decisions, it becomes very generic, very fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just like, if you took some time and thought about it and then quit, just that sort of time is money. But then again, in my business, most of the people who are making artistic decisions are people who are in the corporations or finance or other who don't have any artistic background. It would be like if they called and asked, like if you called and asked me about my financial advice. That would be completely pointless to you. I'm an artist. So, but I know it's sometimes when you see, I will give it the clients a communication that people very much who are not artists find something they like and they want you to do that. And then you try to have to explain to them like, well, we can't do that because it's already been done. But we could do something like that and try to push it in new ideas. So that's a communication. Even in comics, they do that a lot. So
yeah, I think also with comics or like with any form of art, you can run into the issue, like the opposite issue, where everyone is so strong-willed about what they think is like the vision for it. Like, luckily, I haven't run into that here. But anytime you get something where like you're creating a property, people are like, "But it's my baby." I have had to actually do that as an editor, though, where to someone like, you need to murder your children. Just take them up back. Take just like the dullest knife you can find and just start sawing. It's going to hurt, but you need to.
I will say that I am a kind of a little bit of a rare exception where if I do have an idea that I actually can just execute it myself if I wanted to, the way I wanted to. But I know very many other people who cannot do that. And so I understand. Like if I had somebody like my Guardians comic is very much mine. If I had somebody else working on that, yeah, that's the one I'm going to have tunnel vision on. All my other stuff, probably not. Probably do whatever you want and collaborate. But there's certain stories I'm like, no, that's kind of my story. That would be a tough one for me. And that I may have to cuddle that child and not shoot him. But most of my other stories, it just depends on the story. But a lot of times I like to see people interpret my stuff, do different things, design. I'd actually, for one, just because I think it'd be fun, would actually be a writer give me my story to an artist. Like working, because I'm an artist working with a writer, but since I do write, do a flip, work with an artist. I'd be kind of curious. I'd probably drive the artist nuts with a bunch of notes. Just like, man, you're killing me. I don't know. I'd probably just let him go and do it, but I think it'd be interesting to see that from your guys' end. Yeah,
that's almost like what you also to like color something. Like I don't illustrate, but I do paint and color stuff elsewise. So like coloring is maybe something I could look into developing. And so I mean my way flipping to be getting notes and like, no, you didn't shade this right.
It's definitely. Sometimes I think it can be helpful for if you're able to.
It's a teal dot and aqua.
One of the other roles and see where they're seeing it from. that's like the classic. I mean, and known video games and mostly in other areas, like especially engineers, you have the programmers versus the artists.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a classic. Like they just don't. It's like each one is talking over each other's heads or past each other or not. That's a classic. So I think it's always important if you have the ability to, like you be a colorist for once and see, deal with the writer, and then all of a sudden you're like, man, I've been a punk for years, and like if I was a writer doing that and stuff. So yeah, I haven't had anybody work with my writing yet because I usually do it myself. I'd be curious to do that. Inking most of the time is usually not. I don't know how much notes inkers get. It seems like every time I see people ink, they're just pretty much like, oh, it just make it look generally like the original. But like artists get notes, writers get notes, colorists get notes, but do inkers get notes?
I don't know if they do. I mean, they might get go if they ink something really bad.
Yeah.
But in my mind, the inker is almost like the editor for the artist.
Right.
Whereas the editor is there to refine and polish up the writer's words. The inker is there to polish up and refine the artist's lines.
And I've had a few, and I'd be curious to see how people tackle my new art, the new comic. I think I have an inker. I haven't seen his stuff yet. But I remember when John did my Fire Rush, he would take certain lines out or whatever, and he's like, "Is that okay?" And I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not too super picky. I mean, if you completely drawing a face, then I might have to sit down and be like, look, dude. I will say there was one guy years ago, I did this really detailed painting. These like robots fighting for some sort of game we were developing. And he's like, well, I'm gonna have this guy paint it. And the guy painted it, and he painted everything so dark. It's like, they want to get the chiaroscuro, like the focal point in the middle. But he covered up all my detail, and I'm like, dude, you covered up so much that in my mind, I was like, that just looks horrible.
Yeah.
All right, dude. I mean, I was trying to be generous. There have been times where I'm trying to be generous. That was one where I'm just, no, you just destroyed it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Speaking as a painter, if you're going to really darken something, you need to just as aggressively highlight the small areas you're going to highlight to really kind of add depth to it all. And that way also the details that get darkened then look, refined compared to the parts that get blown out in highlight.
I think I feel sometimes the more painting, especially the speed painting, digital painting I see, they will do focal points through bright colors and dark colors rather than doing it through composition or something.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's like, okay, I understand what you're doing, but it's almost kind of a lazy way. I mean, you can make a focal point through a composition or something, though. It's just like, no, everything around it's in shadow except a sword or something. And it's like, okay.
There are ways you can even cheat it too. I mean, like with a model or with acrylic you might use. You can even use it on a canvas, really, if you're doing that. If you're painting with acrylic, because acrylic creates layers, is you can use a wash because they'll soak in between the lines of the acrylic and everything like that, and it'll kind of create a natural shadow, and then you take a highlight on top of that, and it really kind of pulls everything out where it's pulling in areas and then pulling through the others, so you create this kind of gradient sitting on top of the palette, so you're not just using cheat colors, you're actually creating a natural gradient throughout.
Yeah.
But then you can do, if you're doing everything digitally, you can do the same thing where using windows or filters where you can do, do a dimming filter and then do a saturation filter and then do a cooling filter and then do a sharpness filter and all the weird stuff you can do where you can really pull out details across the entire image. So you can
even do that in Photoshop if you, especially with the sharpening and stuff, you can sharpen specific areas to have a little more higher resolution or sharpness than the others.
So this is my diatribe on you can be a lazy highlighter or painter, but there's no excuse to be a bad lazy painter.
It's true. Unfortunately, I'm a line artist, so I am forced. Since everything I do generally by line, like if I got to create a focal point, it's got to be through composition. I don't get the, I could, I guess, darken a lot of stuff, but when you're dealing with either black and white or gray, that's very hard to do.
Yeah.
Unless I draw everything black with one white spot in it. It's usually through composition. So sometimes I see painters just take any drawing, we'll just make it all black and then one bright spot. Like, you cheater. It doesn't take any work, so I don't know. It does. I'm sure it does take work, but it's just kind of like, man. But I've seen a few. And I've always wanted to know, what did the drawing look like beforehand if it was detailed enough? Because sometimes they cover up a lot of stuff. I'm like, what did this look like before?
Yeah.
And so, Yeah, but so so are you looking into maybe coloring comics? Is that what you said?
I might. We'll see how things go. I mean, timeline-wise, probably don't have time to do that now. Editing one book,
Yeah.
writing another, and then also editing the blog and editing
Yeah, you do
another
two
book.
series now.
Yeah, and then I'm editing another one, which I think you're writing.
Another blog, you mean?
Are you doing Mantis?
No.
Is that too much?
I'm not touching.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm doing something. I'm editing something that's being worked on else. So I'm doing.
Yeah. The only thing I'm working on right now is the obsoletes, and I'm actually working on my comic book and then the obsoletes. So I'm drawing 2 comics, and you're writing 2 comics. So
I'm writing
to the club.
Yeah, writing 2 comics, editing the blog, editing another comic, and then running the show. Staying busy.
Got a lot on your plate. So he makes millions, right? Everyone out there knows. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This.
Yes. And at some point, I'll find time to text a female. And on that note, it is about 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. That is our end time for a Tuesday, or a show on Tuesday. I've been your host, Tim DK, writer, creator of Wolf Hunter, associate editor at Silverline, writer, co-creator of Unnamed Project. And I've been joined by Mr. Aaron Humphreys.
Yeah, we can find me on the Facebooks. I actually finally did change my Instagram handle, so now it's not AOH, it's just Aaron Humphreys. Sorry, Humphreys Illustration, one word, all lowercase. Apparently they don't allow you to do capital letters on Instagram. Well, it kept rejecting it, so it's just all lowercase.
Okay.
And Humphreys Illustration on Facebook, my name on Facebook, blah, blah, blah. And then my Goblins comic, which I'm hopefully will be posting on Webtoons soon, and then I'm doing obsolete. So I draw a lot and stuff. Eventually, one day I'll get to draw one of Tim's stories and just completely wreck it. Just make the worst thing possible. Just out of spite. Just kidding.
Just intentionally. We'll set it with the intention of making the most horrific dumpster fire of a book.
Yeah. Just right, I can't make heads or tails out of any of this. I'm supposed to draw this. Just I remember, and I did have a client literally tell me this suggestion when I was making something for a client. He basically look, man, just make it kick ass. I'm like, I don't know what that means. He's like, Luke, just make it awesome. He's like, you don't know, and I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. But that was his entire advice. So I hope I accomplished that.
It's like I'm gonna let you know that art is subjective. So what is awesome for you is maybe not awesome for me. So
no idea.
Yeah, love people. You can also tell when you get people who are just straight up salesmen. You're like, hey man, you're gonna do a great job, and I just need you to really make it the best that you can do. Just really make it exactly what people are gonna want. And you're like, oh, what do people want? It changes every quarter.
I'm just like, I don't. Yeah. So definitely.
All right. So we will be again. Well, we won't be live. Some other people will be live. There'll be some people here on this channel tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern time for Wednesday Wham, and again Sunday for Silver Sunday. We will be back again on Tuesday for a show on Tuesday where we will talk about more stuff.
And hopefully, Quentin should be joining us.
Quentin should be back. We have some other people who may be joining us at some point. We'll see if they finally decide to. And again, brought to you by Daytona Beach Comic Convention. And you'll be able to see both of us at Rose City Comic Con. So until then, make mine Silverline.
Make mine Silverline.
Yes.
That's right.
We have a logo.
I can't even remember.
Yeah.
This is how in tune I am with our live stream tonight. What do I go out on?
What? All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.